Okay, welcome Iron Mountains. This is the first video in this leatherworking series. I wanted to start from the bare basics. And so first, let me introduce myself in case you don't know who I am. I'm Garrett Thornwood. I am the current regent. I have been playing since AmpGuard since 2006. I also spent a number of those years in SCA as well. So I've been doing leatherwork for a couple years now. you know. So first thing I want to tell people is leatherwork is not as intimidating as it thinks it is. It is a lot, and it seems like a lot when you see these big, huge shops with all these tools, and you're thinking, oh my God, I cannot afford all that. Well, that's what this video is about today. We're going to be doing starting tools on a budget. These are bare minimum in this video. Next video, I'm going to do, quality of life tools that are going to make your job easier, faster, nicer, and potential upgrades you're going to possibly want as your budget allows or over time. That's the great thing about leatherworking. You don't have to buy it all up front. You can just buy a piece here and there, get a thing, trade for a thing. Hey, so with that started out, we're going to start with we'll just start over here. So right here, you're going to need a hammer. Obviously, this is a 2-pound dead blow hammer, about $12 at Harbor Freight. You can already see how much it's been used. Here's another one of mine, is a Husky one. This is my personal one I like to use a lot, a little bit more, but they're about $12. You definitely need that to do the heavier punching and hitting, because I like to let the tools do the work. I don't want to have to sit here and swing like I'm John Henry. Next, a knife. You do not need a $300 super fancy head knife. A simple, well, this one's about $10, but this one fits in my hand really good. So you just find yourself a retractable knife that you can, the nice thing about these is you replace the blades all day, really cheap. So anytime you start feeling the leather's dull and it's not cutting well, slap a new blade in. So that's about $10, and that's for a really nice higher end one. You can buy a cheap one for a couple dollars. It really doesn't matter. Next, a wing divider. This can be any standard wing divider you buy anywhere. You're going to use this for marking, measuring, marking holes, doing cut lines, and such like that. So Harbor Freight is your friend. You can buy a lot of this at Harbor Freight for really good prices. Next, speaking of Harbor Freight, is a punch awl. This is just a standard cheap awl. Once again, a Harbor Freight special. I use this for a lot of scratching and cutting on my leather to mark it, and you can even use it to, I wouldn't use it to punch holes, but you could in a pinch. Next up, since we're on Harbor Freight, a nice pair of $2.50 spring needle nose pliers. These will come in handy. You'll see me using these in later videos with the when we get into hand stitching. And then since we're speaking of stitching, we're going to get into needles. These happen to be a pair of James Taylor, I think, needles. They're like a couple dollars for a pack of 25, and they'll last you forever. If that's too much for you, free. They come in with a kit with any kit you buy from Tandy will come with a set of needles. Now they're a little thicker and they're not as robust, so they can break, but hey, they're free. Next, an X-Acto knife. Great for cutting patterns, prints, and stuff like that. Very useful tool to have around. Also with thread and stuff, just a simple pair of thread cutter scissors, but any regular pair of scissors will do. This is a little bit of an upgrade, but I think it's very worth having right off the bat. It is a groove cutter. This is how, and you'll see, I'll demonstrate how to use this, but they're about $10, and I think they're absolutely worth starting with. Your budget should have them. Next, we're going to get into a modeling spoon. Now, you can have an option here between using modeling spoons or bevelers. It's completely up to you. I personally use modeling spoons because they're a lot faster and a lot quicker, but you get a more subtle look with modeling spoon, versus a beveler, but they're still very cheap and worth having. Okay, so since we're talking on a budget, we're only going to go with, assuming you can only buy one punch, you're going to buy a 2-prong. Gosh, where? Now, we'll talk in the next video about upgrades and stuff, but they come in 4 and 6 as usually as a kit. But for right now, for a budget, and you can only afford one, get a 2. You'll see why in later videos. And then next is your actual stamping hammers. So I have this classic rawhide leather hammer. Frankly, I did some adjustments to it, but these are a little expensive for a beginner. They're $30. So, and honestly, I prefer a nice little leather working maul. This one happens to be a 1 pound, 16 ounce, and this was only $16 on eBay. So I think that's a very budget friendly, and this is fantastic for stamping. That being said, when you're using stamps, do not use a steel hammer. Okay, steel on steel, first of all, destroys and will mushroom this out. It will look, this will all open up and get in there, and then things there. And that's on normal hardened steel. Leather stamps are not hardened. They're not designed to be smacked hard. They're designed to just be tapped. Okay, so you're not sitting here to be hitting them hard. Since I like a $16 maul, and there are plenty of upgrades, which I'll show you my fancy ones later. Okay, then next is a swivel knife. This is an absolute essential. As you see, the top here spins, hence why it's called a swivel knife. Now, a budget one, $10 to $15 with a steel blade, and we'll talk about more about how to use a swivel knife in future videos, along with upgrades. I don't have my El Cheapo. This is a Signature Pro. It's a little fatter. It fits my hands. And then I use a ceramic filigree blade. Let me put that there so you can see has a 45-degree angle, but that will come in. Just the blade itself is $30. So that's probably not something you're going to buy up front. But if there's anything you can spend your budget on, this is the tool. You can go cheap on everything else. Do not cheap on your swivel knife. Okay, so now we're going to go with some standard stuff. Obviously, 12-inch ruler. I also have a cheap $4 angle ruler. This is going to come in very useful. You'll see that later. And then finally, a stropping stick. This is the stropping stick. The reason I put this here is because it goes with your knife. And if you don't have a sharp knife, you don't have a knife. And on top of that, and I'll show you how to make this in another video, but this is literally made from scraps and a paint stick. So basic, virtually free. And so this is really all the tools you need for very basic starting off and just to get into it. Now, this is part 1. Part 2, like I said, we're going to talk into a bigger budget, a few more extra quality of life tools, such as end punches, hole punches. Oh, I did not show it, but a rotary punch, I will show that in part 2. Like I said, I'm trying to piece all this together. And then thread reminds me when I'm looking at it, there's 2 types of thread. You have this cheap $4 roll. It's, I believe, about 1 millimeter thick. It's wax thread. You definitely want to use wax thread, not braid it. But on a budget, it's great. This is another, might be a little bit of a budget buster. This was $15 for 50 meters. And is the Ritza Tiger thread. At a 0.8 millimeter, and this stuff is phenomenal. This is what I do all my stitching with. I had to go back and use this for that buzzer band project that I did another video on wax hardening, and boy, you can tell the difference. So with that, and next, another little nice tool to have is a sanding block. This one happens to be a 120-180, and you'll see how this comes into play later in the videos finished when we do edge work. And then another next to low-cost item that's a really great, and this is a great project to start with, and I'll definitely show you guys how to make these. This is a pattern holder. It is just a weighted bag. It's a piece of leather, and I used about this size. I used half a bag of copper-coated steel BBs. I think I paid about $8 for the bottle, and I can make 2 of these or 1 big one. So it's a great deal. Oh, actually, here we go. So here's a bigger one to give you an example. And these are great for holding your pattern work and all that when you're doing stuff. And since these are really cheap, I think they're a great and they're a good beginner project. And we will definitely be showing to do a demo on that. So that is it with the basic tools. We're not getting into edge work, edging tools, all that other stuff in this video. This is just the basics. So this is going to be part 1. I will end the video and I'm going to get set up and we will do part 2, possibly down in my workshop, down in the basement where my leather shop's at, just because I have so many tools I have to bring out. But we will talk about that later. So in the meantime, thank you very much for your time. Stay crafty.